Hey guys, welcome to Green Bean Fiction. So in today's video we are gonna see, what if Deku became #1 hero and fell for Momo? Movie. This story is Fu un accidente by senior_mysterio_ff. Before starting, make sure to hit that like button, as your one like motivates me to bring more stories, and subscribe the channel if you are new so you won't miss our latest videos. This is the story of two people who fell in love by accident, but you might wonder how it all started, so come and find out. The entire 1A group is gathered at the Heights Alliance, and why are they gathered? Well, simply put, they're talking about an end-of-year party. Lita. Well, the teachers and the principal agree about the party. Mina. Yay, I'll put on the karaoke. Toru. And I'm the music. Mina. If we go Toru, let's get everything ready. Kirishima. Hey Mina, wait. Mina. What's wrong, Kirishima? Kirishima. Hey, it's not manly to let your partner go off alone like that. Mina. Come on, silly Toru, let your boyfriend come, it would be awkward if it was just the three of us. Toru. Oh, sure, let me go get it. Everything was seen by everyone, but only one boy was alone because all his friends already had partners. Uraraka ended up falling in love with Bakugo, and the reason why? Because she ended up extinguishing that flame for Izuku, and Izuku never realized it. But he had no problems because none of that bothered him. He was Izuku, but he wasn't so much Izuku anymore, because what he had to go through in first year left him scarred, and it did so in a very harsh way. The smiling Izuku no longer existed. He only smiled when he was with his friends, otherwise he was a serious boy. But putting that aside, Uraraka never had the courage to tell Izuku her feelings, which ended up extinguishing her flame, leaving only a feeling of friendship, but for her it was a little uncomfortable to talk to Izuku. And that caused her flame to fade even more, and Bakugo saw this and tried to help her, but it made her fall in love with him, and in a second they ended up being boyfriend and girlfriend. But Izuku is Izuku. He had the same feelings for Uraraka, but he was Izuku, and he ended up accepting it, and everything was normal for him. Group 1A finished preparing everything for their party tomorrow, as it was Friday and everyone had finished their homework and would have the day off. But in the room of a green-haired boy, he was reading a book because it was his hobby since he was alone, but his room changed, it was just a teenage boy's room. There were no more All Might posters, only music posters or other normal things. His desk had his computer, a table in the center of the room, and his wardrobe, but he also had a pet bed and two bowls, one for food and one for water. But the most surprising thing about Izuku was that his build had changed and he was tall. His battle scars suited him well, but at this moment he had a kitten on his lap while wearing glasses that he used for reading. But it was a time of peace, so why was there a knock at his door? Izuku stood up, but he wasn't wearing a shirt, just black shorts and white slippers. He went to open the door and it was Momo, who blushed when she saw Izuku. Izuku. Momo. Midoriya, the guys asked me if you were going to be at the party. Izuku. Hey, thanks. Call me Izuku, but to answer your question, no thanks. I prefer to be asleep in my room. Momo. This isn't a problem, why don't you want to be at the party? Izuku. Hey, I don't want to bother you with a third wheel. Momo. Like a third wheel. Izuku. Well, everyone has a partner right now, and it would be weird if someone was being a third wheel, but oh well, that's all, I'm going to go to sleep. Izuku Hiba went to close the door but a foot prevented him and his door was opened. Momo. Izuku Midoriya, as group vice president, I order you to attend the party. Izuku. Of course. Izuku had a mocking smile and went to his bed, but not before turning off the lights, leaving Momo surprised because she didn't know what Izuku was really like now, as she thought he was still the smiling boy from before, since she never had the opportunity to talk to him. Only a hello and goodbye came out of the two of them, nothing more, but Momo got angry with him and turned on the light and went to her bed to kick him out of her bed. Momo. Hey idiot, get up. Izuku. Yes, of course, you can turn off the light. Momo. You're shameless. Izuku and Momo were fighting. One was pulling the sheet to cover himself, and the other was pulling it away to make him stand up, creating a comical scene. But something was startling. Momo was still blushing because of Izuku's behavior. But due to a bad move by Momo, she fell on top of Izuku, almost kissing him. They both blushed and Momo quickly stood up. Momo. Well, Izuku, the boys are waiting for you at the party. Izuku. Yes, of course, I'll see you there. Momo. Well, Izuku, see you later. Izuku. Yeah, of course. They were both nervous about what happened earlier. Momo left, closing the door behind her. Izuku was very nervous about what happened earlier, but a vein popped out on his forehead because Momo didn't turn off the light. The kitten that was there just meowed, and Izuku angrily turned off the light. Izuku woke up to the fresh rays of sunlight on the cold morning. The kitten was still asleep. Izuku went to take a cold shower and changed his clothes to go train and went out, but in the living room he didn't find anyone, much to his relief. Since his fight with them over what happened with Shigaraki and the villains on the loose in his first year, it was strange for him to start a conversation with them. He went out to train, but he was seen by someone, and it was Momo Yaoyorozu who came down to get a glass of water, but she felt uncomfortable because of what happened yesterday. But she touched her lips because she could still feel Izuku's breath on them, and a blush came over her. But then came the memory of his partner, and it was Shoto Todoroki, since they became a couple in their first year after they brought Izuku out of his own depression from being a vigilante. So he shook his head and went to get his glass of water. Izuku was training on the beach where All Might gave him one for all, but the memory of Yaoyorozu came to him, but he shook his head and continued training. Time to ship. Izuku arrived at the Heights Alliance with his shirt torn because after he mastered one for all, his clothes would tear or something would happen to him. Izuku. I should go to Mei so she can make me some sturdy clothes. Izuku said to the air and went inside. He saw everyone arranging everything for the party. Everyone saw Izuku and greeted him, and he just greeted them back and went to the elevator and went to his room. She took a shower and wasn't going to go out, but Momo noticed this. Momo. Hey, Izuku isn't here. Everyone was surprised that Momo fixed Izuku's name. Uraraka. Momo, since when do you say Izuku's name? Uraraka, for some strange reason, became jealous. Momo. Yesterday Izuku asked me to call him by his name, is there a problem? Uraraka was surprised by this, but her partner sensed her jealousy and became nervous and jealous because of it. Izuku sneezed in his room while petting his cat. Izuku. I think there's dust around here. Izuku sat down in a chair at his desk and started looking at his computer. Momo. Okay, I'll go get Izuku. Uraraka. I'll go as her friend, I should go. Momo. No, I'll go as vice president, I have to keep an eye on my colleagues. Uraraka and Momo looked at each other with rivalry, but then Lita spoke. Lita. Go Uraraka, if it doesn't work Momo will go, so go. Lita was getting stressed about this while Mei was isolated, holding her hand while she had a smile on her face. Uraraka stuck her tongue out at Momo, causing a vein to pop out on Momo's head. Shoto and Bakugo had doubts about why their partners were acting strangely. Bakugo had an idea about Uraraka and Momo, and Shoto was starting to suspect. Uraraka arrived at Izuku's door but heard a drum set being played while other instruments were being played. She opened the door a little and saw Izuku playing the drums while shirtless and with a smile on his face. Uraraka blushed but shook her head, denying the small flame burning inside her. And Izuku knocked on the door. In one swift motion, he put his drum kit in his closet, paused the music, and opened the door. Izuku. See Uraraka. Uraraka. Izuku-kun, they're asking if you're coming to the party. Izuku. I won't go, I'd be a third wheel so I won't go. Uraraka. I can tell why you think that. Izuku. Everyone has a partner, so I don't want to inconvenience anyone, so I won't be going. Enjoy the party for me. Uraraka. Come on, do it for me as friends. Izuku. Sorry Uraraka, I won't go. Uraraka was about to say something, but the door was closed. This surprised Uraraka because she no longer had her smiling Izuku, she now had someone mature and knew what he wanted. She only started crying because she lost her smiling green-haired friend, but she dried her tears and went down to the main floor. Uraraka. Izuku says he won't come. Lita. And she told you why? Uraraka. Says she won't come because she doesn't want to inconvenience everyone. Kirishima. In what form? Uraraka. Well, He says he's going to be a third wheel and that we should enjoy the party for him. Denki. Pobre Midoriya. Everyone was sad for Izuku, but Momo started heading towards the elevator. Shoto. Where are you going, Momo? Momo. I'm going for Izuku, he's our friend and as friends he should be. Momo got on the elevator and went to Izuku's door and opened it. Izuku was on his balcony watching the sunset while the wind blew. Izuku. Uraraka, I told you I won't go. Momo. I'm not Uraraka, I'm Momo and I've come to invite you to come with us. Izuku. I'm not going, and that's final. Momo. I don't mind, you're a companion and friend of ours and you'll come with us. Izuku. You know I'm not obligated to go, you know, and like I told Uraraka, enjoy the party for me. Momo. Why do you insist on not going? Izuku. For the same reason I said, I don't want to make anyone uncomfortable. Momo. You don't bother anyone, you're our friend. Izuku just sighed and turned away. Izuku. They'll stop insisting if I go. Momo blushed because Izuku looked imposing and sexy to her, as the sun shone behind him and his eyes looked bright, and his height gave him an imposing figure. Momo. This is good. Izuku. Okay, I'll be down in a few seconds. Momo smiled contentedly, nodded, and left Izuku's room. Momo arrived on the ground floor with a slight blush that disappeared when she saw Shoto in front of her. Shoto. And it turned out well. Momo. Will come. Shoto. Bien. Shoto was going to kiss Momo, but she stopped him in his tracks. Momo. Shoto, not now. Shoto was surprised but let it go. Everyone heard that Izuku was coming to their party and the party started until Izuku arrived, surprising everyone and making all the girls in his class blush, including those who were not in his class. Well, Izuku had black pants with black shoes, a greenish-black leather jacket and inside a white t-shirt that was held up by his body, and piercings in his left ear, one in his left eye, and one in his lip, giving him the appearance of a bad boy. Izuku. Well, let the party begin. Izuku snapped everyone out of their trance by taking a glass of water, but he smelled that it had liquor in it and started drinking it. Everyone started the party, but Izuku was sitting alone in a corner of the place, drinking by himself. Izuku was sitting alone in the corner of the place where the party was taking place, but Momo sat down on the sofa where Izuku was sitting. Momo. Hey, why so serious? Izuku. For the same reason I told you, look, everyone's happy and chatting amiably, and it would be strange if I spoke, don't you think? Izuku was very serious because he felt very uncomfortable since everyone was happy but he didn't want to interrupt that happiness but suddenly he felt a warm hand grabbing his. Momo. Hey, don't think that, let's go. Momo smiled at Izuku and pulled him along and took him to everyone and they started talking but Izuku felt uncomfortable but he professionally hid it while being held by Momo's hand. But they were being watched by two people, one jealous and the other doubtful, and they were Shoto Todoroki and Uraraka Ochako. Shoto watched this with doubt as he drank and talked to the others, and Uraraka was another case because she felt jealous but she didn't know why. But she was hugged around the waist by Bakugo. Bakugo. Hey, why so serious? Uraraka. I'm doing this for no reason, I just started thinking about other things. Come on, let's enjoy the party. Everyone was celebrating their last day at school at that party, but she wasn't holding Izuku's hand anymore, he was still drinking his beverage, as was Momo. The party was coming to an end, everyone was leaving because it was very late and the teachers and principal had given them until midnight for their party. Group B joined the party like in the early days of the groups, but by then everyone was leaving or some were so drunk that they were knocked out by the alcohol. But Momo and Izuku were in the green-haired boy's room talking about random things, but they were leaning against the green-haired boy's bed very close together, holding hands. The green-haired boy felt very good with the raven-haired girl, and she felt the same way. They both remained silent, but both had a very strong blush from the drink. Izuku. Hey Momo, let's take you to your room, it's getting late. Momo. Yes, let's go, and thank you, Izuku. The two of them got up but were so drunk from the alcohol that they staggered when they stood up and fell onto the bed. Momo was under Izuku and Izuku was on top of her. The two stared at each other, their breathing heavy from the effects of alcohol, and everything was white for them. A simple kiss started it all. That night no one heard the moans and groans of the two lovers, but for them it was magical. But they will forget everything because of the alcohol, but they will remember it in the morning, and they will feel that it was magical. The next day, Izuku woke up with a headache but felt the cool yet warm morning breeze. He took heavy breaths as he sat on his bed and saw that he was naked, but he wasn't worried. Well, I thought he slept in the heat and took off his clothes to sleep well, then got up and went to take a cold shower to get rid of his headache. And she felt the cold water was good, but someone with black hair was in her bed who started to wake up with a headache and hip pain, but she wrapped herself up more so that she could sleep well and covered her head so that the noise of the water hitting the floor would go away. A while passed until the noise stopped, and Momo opened her eyes, realizing it wasn't her room. Momo. Where am I? That was her question, and she began to look around and saw that it was her green-haired partner's room, and she took off the sheet and saw that she was naked. And he began to get agitated, starting to look for his clothes and found them on the floor, as well as the clothes of the green-haired boy, which he didn't notice because of his headache. But she tried to stand up, but her legs began to tremble, and an unbearable pain came over her hips. Momo. What the hell? But those words were her downfall, for a green-haired boy saw her. Izuku. What? Izuku. What? That's what came out of his mouth when he saw the naked girl, but a slight blush appeared on Izuku's face and he turned his head away. But as if it were a lighter being tried to be lit, the memories came back to them with unbearable pain. Momo. Izuku. What the hell did we do? Momo. You idiot, you got me pregnant. Izuku. Oh no, but it was also your fault. Momo. It wasn't yours, you seduced me, you idiot. Izuku. That's not true and you know it, you started kissing me. A fight started, but miraculously no one heard them, as the fight began to escalate but no one heard them. Izuku. Look, we need to calm down. This isn't going anywhere, Momo. Let's breathe and think. Momo calmed down because Izuku would look very serious and sexy to her, and she calmed down, but a blush appeared. Momo. Well, I agree with you. Izuku. The main thing I'll tell you is that I'll take care of the baby, so I apologize as a man, I ask for your forgiveness. Momo. Don't worry, it wasn't your fault, it was both of ours, so we're both to blame, and thank you for not being that kind of man. Izuku and Momo smiled at each other as if they were a couple and stared into each other's eyes with a smile. Until the kitten meowed, snapping them both out of their trance, and they turned around, blushing and nervous. Izuku. Okay, and the second thing that's going to happen, we'll tell Shoto and the others, or what will happen? Momo. We have to keep it a secret until I talk to Shoto. Izuku. Don't you think it would be better to tell him now? Momo. I don't think she would get too angry and that would cause a fight between you. Izuku just sighed and nodded. Izuku. Okay, I'll help you change and take a bath. Momo blushed deeply and was about to refuse, but Izuku spoke. Izuku. Don't you think this would be normal now? We did it and I saw you naked, so let's go. Izuku was calm and picked Momo up and took her to the shower. He turned on warm water and started bathing her. Momo was very red but felt good, like she was a child again, and let him bathe her, but Izuku didn't touch areas like her breasts and private parts. But Momo grabbed Izuku's hands and put them there, and Izuku was surprised because Momo started kissing him. Izuku returned the kiss and they resumed the sexual act in the shower. A spark between them blossomed due to an accident that led them both to create a spark out of nothing. Momo and Izuku took a vow of silence about the incident involving the two culprits, so that no one would find out for a long time, since they would be leaving the academy the next day as graduates. They both came out of the bathtub in the green-haired boy's room with a big smile, but the raven-haired girl was limping a little because what they had just done was very intense. Izuku changed his clothes again because the other ones were wet from the water, and Momo helped the green-haired boy put his clothes back on, which were scattered on the floor. And they nervously left the green-haired boy's room because they didn't want anyone to see them, but it was a miracle for both of them that no one had gotten up yet. They both went downstairs with a smile and an almost noticeable blush, but they reached the elevator, got in, and started kissing passionately. So they started a relationship as lovers, partners, or friends with benefits, secretly, whatever you want to call it. When they reached the ground floor they stopped and got out. Momo was a little disheveled and Izuku's hair was messy. Thank God they saw them. They didn't run into anyone and went to the kitchen. Izuku. Let me make breakfast, you rest. Izuku gave Momo a quick kiss and went to cook, and Izuku went to the kitchen to prepare breakfast. Momo, as if she were a child who had been given a whim, went to sit down waiting for breakfast. But he noticed that some of his colleagues had fainted and was a little startled, thinking they were already awake. Well, those who were unconscious were Lita, Mineta, Denki, and Sato. But they were only unconscious, but he started thinking about something, and it was that since Mineta had a girlfriend and she was the pervert of a second-year group. So he just started thinking about how he got a girlfriend and kept going until he lost track of time until someone touched his shoulder. And there was a plate in front of her with a traditional Japanese breakfast, and in front of Momo there was a plate of rice, fish, miso soup and hot green tea, and Izuku had the same. Momo was surprised that Izuku made a traditional breakfast and liked how Izuku had changed. He seemed more mature than when she first met him. He was no longer the shy boy, he was someone better. They started having breakfast, but their hands were intertwined under the table. They ate happily. Izuku and Momo parted ways after they had breakfast. Well, they weren't obligated to clean up the mess their classmates made, since neither of them suggested having a party, but one of them supported the idea, and that was Momo. But he would go to his room to rest a little because he still had the effects of the alcohol to a lesser extent, so he would go to rest. But first she would take a pregnancy test because she wanted to confirm whether or not she had Izuku's child. So she put it in a drawer because she was cautious in everything, because if Shoto took the next step, she would be prepared. And so it was, she had her pregnancy test and she took it and it came back negative. She sighed, feeling happy but sad, for she loved children, especially babies, but that dream would have to wait. Momo gave Izuku his first time, and he loved it, but he still held Shoto in his heart. She felt bad for doing that to Shoto, but things happened that way and she couldn't change the past. Momo lay down on her bed, but now she had a dilemma because she already had two people in her heart, and they were Izuku and Shoto. I had to go with someone I trusted, and it was none other than Kendo from Group B. She just sighed and thought, Momo, I'll have time to tell you. And Momo closed her eyes, tired. Izuku was in a quiet place, taking a slow jog as it was his warm-up before training, but during that jog Izuku was very serious. He was thinking about what happened a few hours ago. He was surprised by what happened, but it was something that happened from one moment to the next. But what they discussed in the morning was out of line because he possibly got Momo pregnant, but there's a chance he did or didn't. He would be happy if he had a child, but Izuku thought about the luck and possibilities of the world, so he would wait. Izuku finished his jog and arrived at his former favorite spot, Ozu Beach, and just smiled and started training. Time skipe. Izuku finished his training and saw his clothes destroyed. He just muttered his mouth because the same thing always happened to him, but he only tore off his shirt, which was now just a torn rag, and went to throw it away. Izuku activated his one for all and disappeared from the beach where the waves crashed against the sand. Izuku arrived at the grand gates of UA and entered. Luckily, no one saw him shirtless, but his bad or good luck depended on the point of view. Izuku arrived at the dormitory, entered through the main door, and luckily everyone was there, but they were all with pained expressions, clutching their heads. Well, the price of their inhumane alcohol consumption took its toll, and at this moment the whole group had an unbearable headache. But Izuku was about to leave, but he was stopped dead in his tracks because someone spoke to him. Kirishima. Hey Izu bro, how are you? Izuku. Oh, hi Kirishima. Good, why the doubt? Kirishima. Well, you just arrived and it's very early. Izuku had a poker face because, well, the sun was already in all its splendor and a clock showed 3 in the afternoon. Everyone wondered about Izuku's face and looked out the window and saw the sun and a clock placed above the entrance to the dormitories. Izuku hit his forehead and began to shake his head. Izuku. Kirishima, don't take it personally, but I don't know if Acevis is an idiot or just messing with me. Kirishima started laughing nervously and everyone started laughing, but the girls noticed how Izuku was dressed. He wasn't wearing a shirt, revealing his entire marked body and scars, loose but holy pants, and soldier's boots. The women were nervous, and others made their lust for Izuku obvious. He was only at ease with Kirishima as long as he spoke naturally. But one of the women had just arrived with her boyfriend, and this woman was none other than Momo Yaoyorozu, with a Shoto with messy hair and an irritated face, and his girlfriend was all disheveled. And everyone thought those two had something going on that night, but how wrong they were. But Shoto kissed Momo in front of everyone, surprising them because Shoto wasn't like that, and he went to prepare breakfast. Izuku saw this and became serious, then just sighed and went to his room while no one was watching because they were all amazed. Momo didn't see this, but she touched her lips and the memory of Izuku from the night came back to her. I noticed the green-haired boy with Kirishima. I was going to go with him, but then I saw him disappear and they heard the elevator going up. And everyone started to recover from their astonishment and wanted to talk to the green-haired boy. Kirishima. Izu bro, where's Izuku? Kirishima stated the obvious and they watched the elevator arrive at the floor where Izuku's floor was. Everyone started wondering when Izuku moved so fast, and Momo just got nervous because Izuku saw what Shoto did. Some of Izuku's classmates wanted to go talk to him, but they were stopped by a serious voice. Bakugo. Leave Izuku alone. He did what you wanted, it's his turn to be left alone. They saw Bakugo with an irritated face because his head hurt like hell, but he was eating cereal with his girlfriend by his side. Everyone was sad but accepted what Bakugo said and went to have breakfast, but they saw Momo leaving. Mina. Momo-san, come have breakfast. Momo. I'm sorry Mina, but I had breakfast early. Mina. Since when did you learn to cook? Momo. Upon hearing what Mina said, had a twitch in her eyebrow and spoke. Momo. I'm sorry Mina if you don't like my culinary tastes, but I had breakfast early with Izuku. A girl who was having breakfast with her boyfriend got angry about how he said her friend's name. And this person was Uraraka, who only saw Momo with anger. Momo noticed this and just looked at her seriously, and an awkward atmosphere began to form. Shoto came out of the kitchen with 2 plates of soba, one for himself and one for his girlfriend. Shoto. Breakfast is ready, Momo. Shoto said, dispelling the awkward atmosphere. Momo. I'm sorry Shoto, I should have told you earlier, but I had breakfast early with Izuku. Momo said, a little uncomfortable, but Shoto just shrugged, went to sit down, and started eating breakfast. Everyone watched this with a drop of sweat on their forehead. Momo just had another twitch in her blindness and went to the elevator and went to her room. And the whole group began to clean up and get ready, and then they had breakfast in peace. But what was happening with Izuku? Well, he was very serious. He had to finish his training and his grooming. He finished doing it and was sitting on his bed while his cat. He played between her legs, he saw nothing, but a pain in his chest came to him when he remembered what happened in the living room. He simply got up and went to his balcony as a cool breeze reached his face. Izuku was dressed in military boots, black pants, a white shirt, and a black jacket. But he took a pack of cigarettes out of his jacket and took out a cigarette. Izuku took up the cigarette habit because he still carried the weight and memories of his teacher's deaths. The weight of the war between villains and heroes still rested on him, and he had nightmares about those deaths. When he was a security guard, he saw dead bodies lying in the streets. Even though there were only a few bodies, it was too much for someone so young. When he got to 3rd grade he was already 18 and saw someone smoking and wanted to try it and developed a taste for smoking. Izuku grabbed a cigarette, put it in his mouth, and began to smoke with a match. Music started playing. His group wanted to finish their year on a high note. Only he gazed at the horizon with a serious expression. But someone knocked on his door. In Izuku's room, there was a soft knock on the door. Izuku turned to look at the door but then turned back to look at the sunset, which was magnificent to Izuku. Izuku. The pass is open. The doorknob was heard being turned. Izuku continued smoking calmly. The door closed and heels approached him. Izuku knew who she was and only gave a half smile. The image of her and Shoto kissing really hurt him, but he wondered who she was to make a scene in the middle of the hallway. After all, they were a couple. He was the lover, but it was only because of the accident they had that his flame was rekindled. Izuku felt arms around his abdomen like a head resting on his back. Izuku. And tell me what brings you here to my room. Izuku said these words with a tenderness never before seen from him. Momo. I just wanted to see how you were. Momo said a little sadly because she was starting to fall in love with the green-haired boy. Izuku. I see. The two fell into an awkward silence, as they had nothing to talk about, and the noise their companions were making downstairs was a comical scene until someone shouted. Mina. It's time to dance. The entire group A and B who, for some strange reason, came to their rooms. And dance music started playing. Izuku smiled on his balcony. Izuku. May I have this piece? Izuku suddenly blurted out and only heard them separating from him. He thought Momo was going to leave, but he didn't expect the phrase Momo would say. Momo. Of course, sir. Izuku smiled and turned around with a cigarette in his mouth, but he saw Momo's serious face and Izuku knew what that face meant. Momo. Can you throw that trash away, please? Momo said seriously, and Izuku just sighed and in one movement threw the cigarette to the floor and crushed it with his boot. And he approached Momo, but Izuku noticed how beautiful she was. She wore a wine-red dress, matching heels, and her hair was loose, but what stood out was the red lipstick on her lips. Izuku was simply captivated by the image Momo projected, and all he could do was smile. Momo noticed the green-haired boy's smile and could only do the same. The two approached each other and began to dance to the rhythm of the music. The scene was beautiful. The two danced as if they had known each other for years, as if they were a married couple who knew each other intimately. But the two of them just smiled at each other with love, but for them it went beyond that simple word. This was more than love. They were madly attracted to each other, but that was prevented by just one man. The music ended and Momo was left beneath Izuku, who gazed into each other's eyes with love. The two were going to kiss but the door was opened, but the two lovers were scared. For them, the door was being opened at a slow speed, but the tension was overwhelming. The two lovers didn't know what to do, fear gripped them. Until finally the door revealed a brunette with a smile and her eyes closed. Uraraka. Izuku-kun, do you want to come? The brunette waited for an answer and opened her eyes, and that smile turned into a sad one, full of pure anger. Izuku. Uraraka is not what you see. That's what came out of Izuku's mouth. But Uraraka didn't care and threw herself at Momo in a fit of rage that even she didn't know she was having. Izuku saw what Uraraka was going to do and moved Momo aside, witnessing the powerful blow Uraraka delivered to the floor, leaving her mark. Momo was surprised by Uraraka's actions and had to do something before things got out of control. Momo. Uraraka, calm down, why are you attacking me? Uraraka. Shut up, bitch. Uraraka didn't know what was happening to her, she just felt a burning pain in her chest and she started to cry. What she saw hurt her. The two lovers saw this and became worried. Izuku. Uraraka, relax, why are you attacking Momo? Uraraka. Shut up, Izuku. She took away what I value most. Izuku knew what she meant and just sighed and dodged Uraraka with Momo still in her arms. The scream was heard through the dormitories and the two groups downstairs started to come upstairs because of the commotion that began to occur. Uraraka tried to attack Momo but Izuku stopped her. Uraraka cried from the pain. Uraraka. Get out of my way, Izuku, please. Uraraka cried at Izuku's sad face as he held her hands to prevent her from attacking Momo. The two groups below arrived at the scene and saw Izuku holding the hands of a crying Uraraka and a frightened Momo on the floor. The men made a mistake and Bakugo, furious, attacked Izuku with an explosion, sending him flying out of his room. And an angry Shoto followed Izuku, who flew out onto the dorm lawn. Izuku felt that explosion but with a furious face he got up but he didn't expect a burst of flames on his body that sent him flying again, breaking several trees. Mina approached Momo and hugged her. Mina. Don't worry, Izuku won't hurt you anymore, Momo-san. Momo was scared, but when she flew away, Izuku got even more scared. He wanted to help her, tried to get Mina to let go of her, and tried to talk to her. Momo. Mind the, Mina. I know, don't worry, it won't hurt you anymore. Mina interrupted Momo, not letting her speak and moving her face to make her tears come out, but Momo tried to pull away. Mina, thinking she was crying, began to stroke her hair. Uraraka was amazed by her boyfriend's actions and the same thing happened to her as happened to Momo with Hagakure. Both groups were amazed by what had happened before and even more amazed by what had happened a few seconds ago, but they didn't stay outside and started to come out to stop the fight that had started. Outside the bedrooms, Izuku was getting up with one hand on his abdomen because the area where Shoto hit him was his abdomen and he had a burn mark in that area. Izuku was furious. He was helping but was met with 2 attacks. He clenched his teeth and his power burst forth like a bomb, lifting rods and rocks. He would return the attacks, but with more force. Izuku took off his jacket, throwing it on the floor and tearing off the rag that had once been a t-shirt. Izuku was furious and ran towards Shoto, who tried to stop him, but it was in vain. Izuku tackled him, but he did not stop and continued running through a wall of the dormitories. Shoto didn't stand idly by, starting to burn Izuku when he tackled him. But Shoto suffered immense damage when he went through the wall, but was sent flying by a punch to the face, sending him through several dormitory walls and crashing into the kitchen, denting what used to be a microwave. Izuku saw Shoto and touched his burned shoulder and only clicked his tongue because the affected area was burning. But he received a powerful explosion in his back, sending him flying into a wall. Bakugo attacked from behind but continued his attack with his explosion against Izuku, who screamed in pain. The 2 groups saw the destroyed place and were heading towards Bakugo, who was furious. But they saw him being grabbed by a black whip and slammed against another wall of the structure. Bakugo spat saliva at that attack but received a blow to his stomach that went through the structure. Izuku was beyond furious, and it showed in his power, with strong green lightning bolts shooting out, and his aura was the same. Izuku appeared in front of Bakugo, who received a kick to the face with unprecedented power, breaking his nose. But Izuku was not satisfied, and with more power he punched him in the stomach, causing him to spit blood and fly away. Uraraka snapped out of her trance and went to help her boyfriend, even though it hurt her not to help Izuku. He was her boyfriend after all. Izuku walked slowly towards Bakugo, who was trying to recover from those powerful blows that left him badly injured. Izuku. You know, Bakugo, I thought you were my friend and that you would understand. We could talk about what you saw. The first thing you did was attack me. Bakugo. Shut up, you damn Deku. Izuku stood still and just clenched his fists tighter. Izuku. I heard that damn nickname repeated to me several times in my childhood, but I'm fed up with your damn attitude. I'm fed up with you. You made my life a living hell since I was a child. It's time to settle things, Bakugo Katsuki. Izuku stood in front of Bakugo with his fist raised to deliver a powerful blow, but was stopped by a kick to his face. It hurt too much and he grabbed his nose because they had just broken it. And he saw who it was and was amazed. It was Uraraka. Uraraka. What's wrong with you, Izuku? You're not usually like this. You disappoint me. Uraraka stood seriously in front of Izuku, but Izuku looked at Uraraka with anger in his eyes. Izuku. Who the hell are you to tell me that? Tell your shitty boyfriend why this damn circus started. Uraraka took a step back, frightened by the look in her former friend's eyes. Uraraka. Izuku. Please calm down. Izuku. You say I should calm down. Why don't you just tell your boyfriend why the hell this started? Tell him, damn it. Izuku screamed at the top of his lungs, scaring and making Uraraka nervous. Uraraka was nervous. She knew that if she said why she started this, her boyfriend would break up with her, and Izuku was beyond saving. He would say why he started it. Uraraka knew that if she lied, Bakugo would attack Izuku. But Izuku would destroy Bakugo, and sooner or later the truth would come out, and she would no longer have any hope with her classmates, and it was the same as before. Uraraka sighed and grabbed her other arm. Uraraka. It was a jealous outburst when I saw Izuku dancing with Momo and I attacked Momo, but Izuku stopped me. Uraraka whispered, but Bakugo didn't hear her, and Izuku got even more irritated. Izuku. Speak up, damn it. Uraraka. It was a jealous fit because of you, damn it. Uraraka screamed with teary eyes. Bakugo was amazed by what his girlfriend shouted. And Izuku just clicked his tongue and started to leave, but not before saying something. Izuku. I don't want to see you in my life, and don't ever speak to me again in your entire damn life. And Izuku left, clutching his burned shoulder. Izuku walked among trees while his hand rested on his shoulder, which had been burned by his former friend Shoto Todoroki. Izuku laughed as he thought about how he left him with more than one broken rib. Without realizing it, he was in the place where he had left his burned jacket. He picked it up and started walking towards the exit of the university. But he stopped and saw where his bedroom was and jumped up to his bedroom. And he began searching through all the mess for his cell phone. He began searching through all the destroyed concrete. And all he managed to find were pieces of his old cell phone, and all he could do was sigh and throw it away. And he just saw her backpack in the corner of her room, covered in dust from her old fight, and went over to it. And he saw something that brought back memories and he could only smile. It was his hero notes. I read everything he wrote with great affection. He had notes from retired heroes or those killed in battle. And he saw the note from his classmates, suits for his quirks, and he saw the one from his former friends, and in a rage he tore them out, crumpled them into a small ball of paper, and threw them through the hole in his bedroom. And trying to calm down, her quirk was unstable because of her emotions, she began to breathe deeply. And he succeeded. He saw his old notebook of heroes and closed it and saw the burned cover. He began to remember the taunts, beatings, and humiliations from his former friend Bakugo. And the memory of her former friend Uraraka, whom he helped on several occasions and only returned the favor once. He came to her aid several times, and she only sighed sadly once and saw the trash can overturned. He went to it and put the trash back in its place, then looked at his notebook one last time. He tore off a sheet of paper, took out a pencil, and began to write calmly. He no longer cared what was happening outside. He will no longer help. He is tired and fed up with them. He wanted his peace and quiet, and his own group insisted on something he didn't want. With a single sigh, he finished writing, looked at his old notebook one last time, and threw it in the trash. He grabbed his jacket and climbed out through the hole in his bedroom. Nobody was there for him and he for them ever again. With the others, everyone was shocked by the old fight. This had never happened to them before. Izuku was a quiet boy. But far from reality, Izuku had changed. He was no longer the shy and altruistic boy they knew. Someone snapped out of their shock and angrily pushed the person who was holding her, and it was Momo. She slapped the person who was holding her. The person who was slapped was amazed while grabbing the affected area. Momo. This wouldn't have happened if you'd let me speak. Momo was furious. This would never have happened if her friend hadn't held her back. Mina. I wanted to help you. Momo. Instead of helping, you didn't let me speak with your nonsense, Mina Ashido. This was your damn fault. If you had let me speak and hadn't hugged me supposedly to help, this would never have happened. Mina was amazed. Momo would never act like that. Momo. And Izuku was fine. Now I don't know where he is, and Shoto with his nonsense made everything worse. You know what? I'd better go help Izuku. Momo said furiously and started to go to the dormitories. They were all just quiet and wondering if they really were good friends. Kan Uraraka. She stood there watching where Izuku had gone. She was just crying. She had lost a great friend and former love. But he could only stop when he heard a groan of pain and could only see where Bakugo was trying to stand up. She started to go and help him, but she just stood there sadly listening to her boyfriend. Bakugo. Don't come near me, round face. Bakugo said in pain, as Izuku had broken several of his ribs and shattered his nose. But Uraraka didn't hear him and could only approach and put her hand on his shoulder. Bakugo was about to say something but could only remain silent upon seeing Uraraka's face, which was pure sadness. The two remained silent as they went to the infirmary. Group A was destroyed, there would be no more harmony, and it was their last day, and it was the worst end of the year that ever happened. Momo was standing among the trees, very angry and sad. He arrived at the dormitories but saw all the mess they had made. She sighed. She saw her lover's bedroom was a disaster, its wall completely destroyed, the remaining concrete falling to pieces. He saw the ball of paper on the grass and his curiosity got the better of him. He went to that ball of paper and when he got to that ball of paper he opened it. They were well-made drawings of them, every detail of them, every quirk in depth, and improvements they could make. She saw underneath a signature and a name that amazed her. It was Izuku's. She smiled. They had similar tastes and she folded the sheets lovingly but left another sheet in another pocket. It had the name of Kriti. Momo started going to Izuku's dorm to help him, but before he went to the elevator she heard a groan. And it was her boyfriend Shoto Todoroki trying to get up by grabbing his rib area. Momo saw him shaking his head, but she just sighed and was going to go help him, but she stayed standing in the same place because her boyfriend looked at her furiously. Shoto. Stay there, I don't want your stupid help. Shoto said furiously as he covered the affected areas with his ice and stood up with slight tremors in his body. Momo, for her part, looked at Shoto angrily and spoke. Momo. It's not my problem that Izuku beat you and you went to attack him in the first place. Shoto glared at her and replied. Shoto. So then I wouldn't have helped you, and don't you think you're talking about Izuku too much everywhere? First, you have breakfast with him, and second, you're very attached to him. If you want, stay with him. Shoto said the last part coldly, leaving Momo astonished and with a pain in her chest. Shoto. I don't need you anymore, you're nothing but a damn whore who goes with whoever has the most power. Momo felt a deeper pain in her heart because of the words Shoto was saying. Shoto. From this moment on I don't want to see you anymore, we're breaking up, Momo. Shoto said, leaning against the wall, leaving Momo standing in the same place sobbing. With Izuku. He was walking down the street wearing his jacket. The sky was cloudy. Izuku walked around looking for something, or rather a place. This was seen by passers-by because of his burned jacket, but Izuku was neutral. But then the rain started to fall, and everyone ran to their homes, but Izuku stayed behind, staring at the sky. The green-haired boy clenched his fists in anger as people pushed him because of the rain. But Izuku wasn't moved, it was as if he were a concrete wall. People were falling to the ground thanks to the crowd pushing people to gain shelter from the rain. But Izuku could only sigh and start walking in his direction. Izuku could only remember the good times before the war between three heroes and villains happened. Everything was happiness and everyone was smiling. He just wanted to know when it all broke down. When he changed, he used to smile, but now he was a shadow of that boy who smiled in the face of life's blows. Now he was nothing like that. Nobody could make him smile. He didn't have his mentor, his mother, he was alone. Izuku arrived at the place he was going to. It was a bar. Izuku entered as a bell rang. He was soaked from the rain, but he didn't care and went to sit down alone. The people who were there didn't care about the person who entered. The place was depressing. There was only absolute silence, gentlemen drinking as if their lives depended on it. People on their last legs, their bags torn, their nails bitten down to the flesh. And there were more people of that same type in the place. Everything was almost dark if it weren't for a light in the middle of the place that barely managed to illuminate. There was only one girl dressed as a bartender who served everyone and looked directly at Izuku. He walked straight to the chair where the girl was serving and sat down. Unknown. Hard day no. The girl said while cleaning a glass. Izuku just stared at the table and saw the small job. Izuku. Give me a bottle. The girl saw him and sighed, then took out a bottle of sake and placed it in front of Izuku with a glass. The girl continued cleaning and bringing alcohol to those who were around. But Izuku was just drinking, but suddenly he started to cry. He was frustrated. He wanted to go with his mother, but it was impossible. No one he knew had left. He wanted a hug from his mother, a pat on the shoulder from his mentor. But they were just simple memories. Izuku began to sob silently as he drank. The girl saw Izuku and all she could do was put up the closed sign. It was already very late and her customers had left. The girl approached Izuku. But he could only listen. Izuku. Why does everything always go wrong for me? Something always goes wrong for me. I wish I could go home with Mom. I miss you, Mom. Izuku cried silently. The bottle was empty, and the girl could only approach Izuku and pat his back while Izuku cried silently. Izuku was leaning against the bar with a bottle of rice sake, but it was empty. But what was Izuku doing? He was asleep. The whole bar was empty, the lights were off, and there was a peaceful silence. Small rays of sunlight began to appear in the bar, filtering through the windows of the establishment. And one hit Izuku directly, bothering him, but he only grunted as an infernal pain reached his head as if he had been hit by his teacher. And for just a few seconds she kept her eyes closed, and when she opened them she saw the unfamiliar place. He just squinted and felt the sharp pain of Shoto's burn and could only click his tongue. He just stood up and saw the place was closed. He was going to use his power to get out, but someone stopped him. Unknown. Hey big guy, if you break something you pay for it, you know. A girl spoke. She was a beauty in person. She was blonde with blue eyes. She was wearing a top and denim shorts that reached above her knees and Converse sneakers. Izuku just got nervous. He could only smile because of how nervous he was, but the pain from the burn and the headache he had didn't help him much. Unknown. Well, since you owe me for yesterday's drink and you tried to break into my place, you owe me something. The girl spoke flirtatiously to Izuku, who turned completely red. The girl just started laughing at the face Izuku made and then opened the door for the boy to come out. Unknown. Well, you can pay me later, come back soon. The girl approached Izuku, kissed him on the cheek, and left. Izuku just turned bright red and ran off to Ua for his graduation. With Momo. The girl was devastated. She cried all night, unable to get the much-needed sleep. The only thing she could think about was Izuku. She was worried about the missing green-haired boy. Her friend Jiro tried to comfort her, unfortunately failing. Everyone knew about Shota and her breakup. They also tried to find the green-haired boy, but the process failed as well. The only thing they were able to achieve was to rebuild the green-haired boy's room. Thanks to the help of Cementos, they gave explanations of the events to the director, who was furious with the 3 people responsible for the disappearance of the green-haired boy. Well, the director made a promise to the deceased #1 hero. Flashback. It shows a war zone, collapsed buildings, heroes and villains fighting to the death. Heroes fell before the villains. A giant person was destroying everything. A heroine rushed to stop him but failed and died from the great fall. Another heroine appeared, growing stronger and trying to stop that being, but unfortunately she received a great blow, knocking her unconscious and causing her to fall into several destroyed buildings. The area was the very presence of war. Heroes dying, civilians dead, children crying for their parents, and villains screaming with excitement, but something was felt throughout the place. 2 beings with a great presence appeared, a white-haired one and a green-haired one, face to face. The blows from the green-haired and white-haired boys began to echo throughout the area. Smash! The green-haired boy shouted. The rumble of his blow shook the earth. The white-haired boy went flying, destroying buildings behind him. Izuku! You bastard, you'll pay for this! The green-haired man screamed with a fury never before seen in him. His body shone like a torch. Green rays shot out with great power and could be heard from all sides. His eyes showed how furious he was. Shigaraki. Did you like the surprise, Izuku? Shigaraki spoke from afar with a strange smile that sent chills down the spines of those present. Izuku. You damn bastard, she had nothing to do with it, but you. He couldn't finish speaking because he was hit by the giant being. Gigantomachia sent the green-haired boy flying, and Shigaraki could only laugh like a madman. All the villains started laughing with Shigaraki, but a skeletal blonde figure became worried about his successor and started running to help him. Bad mistake. He was pierced by a metal bar sent by All for One, who was on the floor, badly wounded and dying. All for One. If I'm going to die, you're coming with me, All Might, haha. And the dark being fell lifeless to the floor. Everything was seen by an Izuku who was crashed into a wall. He could only see his teacher smile and fall to the floor lifeless. Izuku felt powerless. His veins were bulging, starting to emerge from his body, marking him all over. The One for All came out like a great flame. Black whips emerged from Izuku's hands, transforming into knuckle dusters. Lightning bolts shot from the sky, crashing against the ground, demanding the life of a despicable being. Izuku would give up that soul. No one could see when Izuku appeared in front of Shigaraki, but he flew away. Shigaraki crashed into every building wall. But his punishment will not stop until his death. Izuku appeared above Shigaraki with a kick to his face that slammed him to the ground, making the earth tremble. Those green rays were gone, now they were red. Shigaraki crashed to the floor spitting blood, but Izuku grabbed his foot, tearing down the walls he saw with his body. Shigaraki screamed in pain but felt Izuku's hand on his face and was dragged across the floor with great force. In desperation, Shigaraki tried to disintegrate Izuku's arm, but he felt one of his hands break with a punch from the green-haired boy. Shigaraki screamed in pain. All he could do was kick the green-haired man in the face. She had an idea. Izuku released Shigaraki from his face only to kick him in the abdomen, so hard that the sound of the white-haired boy's ribs echoed throughout the area. Shigaraki spat an indescribable amount of blood onto the floor. But Gigantomachia appeared, trying to hit the green-haired man. But the green-haired boy dodged the punch and jumped at the giant's face to destroy it with a single punch. The giant fell to the ground, knocked out. Izuku saw the white-haired man stand up from the floor, spitting a large amount of blood onto the ground, holding his malformed chest from that kick. Izuku started walking towards Shigaraki, but Shigaraki spoke as best he could. Shigaraki. You should have heard the screams. Izuku froze. Shigaraki. You know, it was really tough trying not to tell me where you were when I disintegrated one of her fingers. She was screaming your name, but you never came. That damn girl never said where you were. But the best part was disintegrating her brain. It was the best. Her screams of pain, her yelling at me to stop, it was the most exciting thing I've ever felt. Shigaraki began to laugh like a maniac even though his ribs were starting to pierce his lungs. Izuku was in shock. His mother was dead. That piece of shit lied to him that he had his mother. Izuku started to cry, but the fury was still there. The earth began to tremble and Izuku was ready to kill him. Izuku appeared in front of Shigaraki, who only saw those eyes full of anger pierce him, but an agonizing pain was present in his abdomen. All he could do was watch his enemy's fist soaked in his own blood. Izuku. Just shut up. Shigaraki hears those last words from his enemy and falls dead onto the cold, destroyed floor. The villains stopped and saw that scene. Fear overwhelmed them. But where was Nezu? Minutes before All Might was to go help. Nezu. All Might, if you go you will die, understand, friend. Nezu was worried about his best friend. All Might. I know, Nezu, but it's my time. Izuku needs me one way or another, so I'm going to help him. His mother asked me to. All Might was leaving, but not before saying something. All Might. Nezu, promise me that you will protect Izuku when I leave. Nezu could only watch his friend looking sad, and all he could do was give his friend one last smile. Flashback. Graduation was postponed for a week on the principal's orders. Izuku started running from rooftop to rooftop with his one for all active. Luckily, he had his hero ID in one of his jacket pockets. Everyone was waving to the green-haired boy from the ground. Izuku was smiling at the people. Izuku spotted the UA and with a jump that cracked the floor he arrived at his school. The heroes monitoring the entrance could see the green-haired boy arrive in a jump, raising a small cloud of dust. Izuku. Have a good trip. The green-haired boy smiled. He felt good. A few drinks sometimes help. The decision. Izuku was viewed with astonishment by the heroes monitoring the entrance, as the director of the UA institution sent a warning that they would find Izuku no matter what. But it disappeared again with its amazing speed. But why did he disappear? The answer is simple. He wanted to see Momo because he already knew what he wanted, and Momo wanted him. Well, for the simple reason that he fell madly in love with her, and if he had to fight Shoto for her, so be it. Izuku was jumping between trees heading towards the dormitories, but he noticed all his classmates at the entrance looking for someone. But he saw two people whose presence he disliked, Katsuki Bakugo and Uraraka Ochako. He saw that they were also standing on his balcony waiting for someone. Izuku had to stop abruptly because he found it strange that they were standing like soldiers. Izuku started thinking of 1,000 ways to get into the dorms without being bothered. His brain was racing. He took the trouble to check the dorm layouts just in case, or if a villain got the bright idea to break into UA and attack. Izuku raised his head and saw a closed vent and activated his power. And he raised his hand and a whip shot out in the direction of the vent and tore the hatch off with great ease. Everyone heard the sound and knew who it was, so they went into the dormitories looking for Izuku. But he smiled, his plan was a success, and jumped onto his balcony, entering his bedroom. But she heard sounds coming to her room and began to think about what to do. She knew they would search every corner of her room. So he went out onto his balcony and, using a black whip, climbed onto the roof of the bedrooms. And he started running to one side to go get someone. And he jumped and again using a black whip, he used it to grab onto a railing and began to climb. His plans were successful and he saw the door closed and knocked several times and heard the bed creak and saw Momo with red eyes and very disheveled. He felt sad. He knew it was his fault that she was like that. Momo opened the glass door and could see Izuku standing there with a sad look. But she didn't think twice and hugged Izuku as if her life depended on him. She began to cry. All Izuku could do was hug her, stroking her soft hair. Izuku. I'm here, Momo. That was all he could say to a sobbing Momo on his shoulder. A long time passed where Momo confided in Izuku. The two were lying on the raven-haired girl's large bed. Momo was resting on the green-haired boy's chest. And Izuku caressed the soft hair of the black-haired girl who had fallen asleep on the green-haired boy's chest. He was looking at the ceiling of the brunette's bedroom. A light pink dress with gold embellishments. He only gave a slight laugh, as he found his lover's tastes curious. But her thoughts were interrupted by a cell phone ringing. Out of curiosity, he grabbed his lover's cell phone and saw the director's message to look for the green-haired boy. He sighed and put his phone back. He just clicked his tongue. He wanted to get up, but the raven-haired woman held him tightly so he wouldn't leave. Izuku sighed at that moment. He didn't feel like explaining things, so the best thing he could do was close his eyes and fall asleep. The following morning, the two lovers got up lazily but felt each other's warm heat and looked at each other, but the black-haired girl's face turned crimson. And she nervously pulled away from Izuku and wanted to explain everything before, but she stuttered. The green-haired guy thought it was cute. Momo. Izuku, I can explain. Izuku just smiled at the black-haired girl, who was surprised to finally see a big smile on the green-haired boy's face again, and she couldn't refuse to say it. Momo. Beautiful. Izuku, seeing this, simply smiled. His heart wanted to ask the black-haired girl for a kiss, and so it was. The black-haired woman was surprised by the action taken by the green-haired man. But she didn't refuse either and wrapped her arms around the green-haired man. He just pushed the black-haired woman onto the bed. And a deep kiss began, a kiss that expressed all the feelings of the green-haired boy to the black-haired girl. A long time passed where the green-haired boy did everything possible to deepen the kiss of love with the black-haired girl. She was alone. It felt good. It was beautiful for her. She felt happy and her heart prayed that this would never end. The oxygen was running out and the two had to separate. Izuku simply pressed his forehead to the black-haired girl's and smiled once more. He felt happy with the black-haired girl, and that was all he could say. Izuku. Te amo Momo Yaoyorozu. The black-haired girl blushed. She knew she had just broken up with Shoto, but the green-haired boy in front of her eyes gave her something that Shoto didn't give her, and that was love. And the black-haired girl, in response, could only kiss the green-haired boy again. The green-haired man knew her answer immediately and could only let himself be carried away by the black-haired woman. A long time passed and many things happened. Izuku and Momo finally became a couple. Izuku went to his room to change in order to go with Nezu. Her clothes reeked of alcohol and she took a bath before going with the mouse. But he couldn't wipe the smile off his face. He felt alive again after a long, harsh, bitter time. Finally, he could smile at time, and when he finished, he headed in that direction without anyone noticing. His time as a security guard did him some good. When he arrived, he knocked on the door and received a pass. Izuku and Nezu had a long, very long talk where Nezu explained everything about life and responsibilities. All Izuku could do was lower his head as if a father were scolding his son. When he finished, Nezu could only smile. He felt relieved to see Izuku safe. Nezu. Izuku, it's good to see you. I hope our talk was helpful. Izuku. I'm sorry Nezu, I know it was irresponsible to leave without telling anyone. Nezu. I know, Izuku, but I see that your coming out was useful in some way. That's nice. But well, Izuku, you can leave. I'll let the school know you've arrived. Izuku could only sigh. He knew that his short time of peace would end with that announcement. Izuku. Nezu, please don't tell anyone for now. You can send out the warning tomorrow, but right now I just want to relax. Would you do me that favor, Nezu? Nezu just looked at Izuku, his face begging him to do him that favor, and Nezu just sighed and nodded. Nezu. Okay Izuku, you can retire just for today. Izuku just smiled and left. Nezu knew that Izuku should finish this year, and all he could think about was that tomorrow they would finally leave school. And she just smiled. Tomorrow would be her student's graduation. Many years have passed. Group A has had many adventures, from a villain attack to saving the country. But the only one who has stood out is the student Izuku Midoriya, the apprentice and successor of Japan's former #1 hero. The only hero who kept the villains of his time at bay, from the #1 villain to street villains, achieving a feat never before seen, lowering the crime rate, something no other hero of that time could accomplish. But his apprentice achieved something that no one else could. From new times to old times, the villains were almost non-existent. Since the war between heroes and villains, that mark was achieved, a 16-year-old teenager rose to the top of the villains and heroes. But at what cost? Well, that cost was the life of his teacher and mother, but at least a long and lasting peace was achieved. But he had not had peace for many years. He became distant and rarely smiled. But someone reached his heart, giving him a forgotten warmth, and that someone was a girl who, by chance, by an accident, became entangled with him. Giving each other warmth, they had setbacks and lows but managed to establish a love between them. And when they came together it was with a kiss of love. But what are they doing now? Let's see. Izuku's POV. It's been years since my graduation and I've been the #1 hero. I still remember when my graduation was. It was weird and awkward. Flashback. Izuku was in Momo's room laughing with her because the principal had given him the day off to be missing. Momo and Izuku laughed affectionately, telling each other about their lives since childhood, the silly things they did or did with their parents. Momo discovered that Izuku never met his father, that his mother told him his father died in an accident. Or he told Izuku that he disappeared but never knew about his father and put that aside when he discovered that he was quirkless. Well, everyone already knew the secret of one for all in the war between villains and heroes. But Izuku discovered that Momo never had any friends and was homeschooled in every way possible, never having any contact with people as a child. But the two discovered their passion for quirks and reading. The two of them smiled at their silly childhood adventures. And they stayed like that until they fell asleep because Momo received a message from the principal that tomorrow was their graduation. The next day, the two woke up in the same bed, embracing each other. They just smiled, and Izuku said goodbye with a kiss and went to his room to put on a suit for his graduation. He just smiled nostalgically. He knew his mother would be proud of him for having achieved his crazy dream of being a hero. He only saw the suit his mother had bought him before her death. He took it out of the closet. It still had the protective plastic and was covered in dust. He just dusted it off and pulled out the plastic. It was a tuxedo and a green tie. Izuku tried on the suit and it fit him perfectly, and a question popped into his mind. How could his mother have guessed his size so well? He just put on his suit and left his room. Luck was on his side and nobody was in the hallway. The green-haired man walked calmly through the quiet corridors. He remembered every moment he lived in that building, his friends, his adventures. The late-night talks he had with his mentor, the pranks of Mineta and Kaminari. The fights he had with Bakugo, the conversations with his former friends. He could only smile at those low memories. By a twist of fate, he saw the door in front of him. She saw the gold plaque on the door, could only smile lovingly, and touched that metallic gold plaque. Momo Yaoyorozu was the name marked on that gold plaque, even though they were short but beautiful memories about the raven-haired girl. From a simple, good morning, to a long and loving conversation, she could only smile with great affection. She could only walk away and start going down the stairs because she was in no hurry to go to her ceremony. Izuku remembered the parties his classmates used to have. The screams of Monoma and Bakugo made him laugh. Lita's scolding of his group. The meals that made the passage of his hand along the wall that had a mark from Bakugo's explosion. Even though the memory was bitter, he just smiled nostalgically. He walked past the armchair they used for their meetings with friends, but he didn't join those meetings. He was no longer the old Izuku and could only remain defiant. Izuku looked at the kitchen and just let out another laugh, remembering how Momo and Kyoka made the oven explode. But she saw a place in the distance. It was her former friend Uraraka's favorite place. He knew that she no longer belonged to him and there was no longer a bond of friendship between him and her. There was nothing left. I just sigh with sadness. Tomorrow morning everyone will have to vacate their rooms. Although it may sound rushed, he and Momo already had plans to live together. That's what they talked about at night. Even though they were young, they had already planned everything. So I just sighed, took out my pack of cigarettes, took one out, and the last one went to a trash can and threw the pack away. He put the cigarette in his mouth and began to smoke. The building felt cold because of how lonely he felt. I knew more kids would come who wanted to be heroes and would move into the building. She knew someone would want help with her training and discovered that Momo had kept her notes. But he did her the favor of burning pages that were useless so that someone would find out her secret. He saw the notebook on the table, grabbed it, and went back to his room. He looked at the floor of his room and went to a board in the corner. I picked it up and put the notebook there. He saw the suitcase on the bed. It was a large suitcase considering how few things it contained. I knew that Aizawa had taken some of his things to do him the favor of keeping them at his mother's house. He just sighed and saw that the cigarette was about to burn out. He took his last drag and smiled. Finally he would be a great hero. Izuku left the building and started heading towards the graduation hall. Music was playing in the distance, and the voices of boys were talking about their things. But Izuku passed by a bench and stared at it. A warm breeze passed by him and he could only shed a tear. He saw his teacher and him talking amiably with his mother on the phone. The three people were laughing, but then he felt a hand on his shoulder. He saw a similar hand and turned around. He saw two people. His mother and his teacher were there, but he could only hear his teacher's voice. All Might. Izuku, we are proud of you. Izuku could only shed tears, but a smile formed on his smiling face. Izuku. Thank you. And the two figures disappeared with a warm breeze. But someone was coming for him, and all he could do was wipe away those tears of happiness. A sweet scent reached him and he recognized it. It was his girlfriend Momo Yaoyorozu. He just saw her and will always say that he fell deeply in love with a great girl. He simply extended his elbow and his girlfriend intertwined her arm with his. They went calmly to graduation. The calm between the two was very obvious. They felt at peace with each other. Until finally the visitors arrived. They went with them, but Izuku just ignored them. Shoto saw Momo in anger. Did he forget it so easily? The answer was obvious. The two of them simply went to sit next to the director with surprising calm. But his gaze focused on a large statue of All Might. Behind it was a large cherry blossom forest. The calm was immense. It felt peaceful. The ceremony began. Each boy who passed by gave his speech. Smiles and nostalgia were present. Everyone was talking about All Might and the other teachers. The only words they used were, All Might helped me with my problems. And Izuku smiled at this. His mentor had helped everyone, and he would do the same. He will carry on the dream that both he and his mentor shared. Momo saw Izuku smiling at this and all she could do was lean on his shoulder. They all passed and only he was missing. Momo just squeezed her boyfriend's hand and gave him a smile that was returned. Izuku stepped onto the stage and felt a great calm within him. Izuku. Hello, I know many of you will know me and others a little. Let me introduce myself again. My name is Izuku Midoriya, student of Group A, the annoying 1A. I know I'm not very talkative or haven't talked much with many people, but hey, here I am talking pleasantly in front of everyone. But I know that many have spoken about my mentor, my teacher, my father. Izuku shed a tear but still smiled. He was the only one who gave me hope of being a hero. I've been on a rough path before, but he gave me a lot of encouragement and helped me in this race of heroes, and I know he's no longer with us. But the great and mythical All Might lives on in our hearts. I know he is proud of us for having achieved this great goal. Life has not imposed a great number of obstacles, but we have set foot in the mythical and prestigious UA school. Therefore, let us show the world what we are made of. Let us forget the past even though the losses we have suffered hurt us. And let us hold our heads high, and this great school and my mentor have instilled in us, say with me. Plus Ultra. Everyone looked at Izuku with a big smile. He was happy, he had achieved his goal. He finally took the big step in his career, he was happy. Izuku received applause from his classmates, but when he saw a bi-colored hair, he just sighed and saw Endeavor's old gaze in him. It would be difficult to deal with him now. And he just sat down with his girlfriend Nezu. A platform rose up with some scrolls, ahead of everyone. He called out the names of each student as they went up and left the school. As dusk fell, the last to receive his diploma was Izuku. Even though his mother wasn't there, he felt that she was watching him. Izuku received his diploma and left, going to the dormitory where he heard the voices of his classmates. But he saw his girlfriend waiting for him outside with a big smile. He smiled and the two of them went on. The group went to the maximum. Flashback. And that's how I finished school. Right now I'm at the top of the Ozu building. Crime is almost non-existent. People live their lives peacefully. The new students at UA are amazing. Their quirks are very strong. That makes me happy. I hope the future is prosperous. But the story of One for All stopped because I cannot inherit my quirk for the simple reason that quirks no longer exist. And the threat of All for One is non-existent. All I have left is to live with my beloved and keep doing my heroic duty. Pa Izuku. Izuku took a great leap. People were watching him and greeting him. But he only made his morning rounds arresting petty criminals. And helping people in any way I could. Until it got late and he started walking home. As dusk fell, he simply smiled, fulfilling his mentor's dream. Until I stopped in front of his house. It was his old apartment. He just came in and spoke. Izuku. I'm home. Izuku was in his happiest moment of all, for he was at the altar of a grand church, dressed in a suit, waiting for his beloved. He was both excited and nervous because this was unique and special for him, but there were many people in the church. But few knew him, such as Principal Nezu, Aizawa, Mirko, Endeavor, and the current number 4 hero, Hawks. There were very few likes, but to his annoyance, Shoto had a very serious face. His sister was simply embarrassed by her brother's attitude and just gave up. Izuku just sighed and saw the priest in front of him who was happy about this, and Momo's parents were happy for their daughter. Not only did she have the number 1 hero, but he was also a great person. Momo was simply happy about what had happened and could only smile at them. Izuku only began to remember his life after UA. Flashback. He went to live in his old apartment, did everything that needed to be done in that apartment, cleaned it, and provided labor to restore it to its former glory. And the most decorative thing he did was a large mural with photos of his mother and teacher. And moments after a long time fixing his house, he went out to make his hero debut. People felt hope again because the green-haired boy's debut was like seeing the old shadow of the hero All Might. People just smiled at this. The green-haired boy felt a great peace from it, but not everything was happiness, was it? Well, the third great hero of the top, Shoto Todoroki, asked for a fight against Izuku. This astonished people, and Izuku only agreed to end Shoto's cycle of jealousy. And so the fight took place. It was recorded in the old arena where the two posed and had a great spectacular fight in their first year. Izuku was just serious and Shoto suddenly activated his quirk and launched himself at Izuku, who simply dodged and delivered a powerful blow to Shoto, leaving him unconscious on the floor. The fight was too quick for the people to be amazed and they just applauded. Izuku just sighed and said, "People truly don't change despite time, and Shoto, you are truly following in your father's footsteps." Izuku left. At that time, Momo was in her mansion arranging many things for her life with Izuku. Her parents talked to her about this for a long time, too long for the raven-haired girl's liking. But everything was already arranged. The girl was packing a lot of clothes into a large suitcase. The butler who was with her was just nervous seeing such a large amount of clothing that could fit in that suitcase. The butler could only watch, waiting for his mistress's orders. The girl kept putting endless clothes into several large suitcases until night fell. The dark-haired girl's room was empty, only the furniture remained, but in its place there were many suitcases. Perfect. The girl just wiped the sweat from her forehead, and the poor butler was carrying a suitcase in his hands. "Miss Momo, what do I do with this?" The butler was trembling because the suitcase was very heavy. "Oh, sorry Fred, you can leave it there. Tomorrow will be a great day." The raven-haired girl just smiled. The butler left the heavy suitcase in a corner of the room and withdrew, but not before bowing. The raven-haired girl only touched her lips and smiled, remembering the green-haired boy. But Izuku was at home resting with a smile, remembering the raven-haired girl. "Momo, we'll be back soon." Night gave way to day and the green-haired boy was at home having breakfast while watching television. But his doorbell rang. much to the green-haired man's surprise, and when he opened his door he saw a man in a tuxedo and black glasses. "Are you Midoriya?" The man spoke firmly. "Why the doubt?" The green-haired man looked seriously at the man who only nodded and stepped aside, revealing a smiling Momo. "Izuku." And the black-haired girl threw herself into the green-haired boy's arms, planting a kiss on him. The man went to collect his mistress's things. The two of them were simply happy, and it was all conveyed through that wonderful kiss. Until the two of them finished that loving kiss, looking into each other's eyes with love. "What are you doing here, Momo?" Izuku said happily. "Silly boy, I'm coming to live here," the raven-haired girl said, smiling happily. Izuku was just surprised, smiled a lot, and just nodded. Throughout the day, the green-haired man helped the man carry the raven-haired woman's things to the apartment. And Izuku was nervous about the large amount of his girlfriend's things because it took her a whole day to upload them. And the man left crying because the raven-haired girl was like his niece. The man just cried while he hugged her. Izuku just smiled nervously because the scene was comical until he left. The two just looked at each other and smiled. Time passed and Momo became Izuku's heroic partner in his fights against the villains. This increased the popularity of both of them until the moment passed and Izuku was named #1 hero, as was Momo's #1 heroine. The two of them gave a press conference that was much too long for their liking because the paparazzi wouldn't stop talking. And they were asking about very intimate things, plus one reporter who was just looking at Izuku in a very morbid way, and Izuku felt very uncomfortable. Until the two of them decided to leave, with a great jump from the green-haired boy who was carrying Momo in his arms. And the life of the two was very peaceful, there were few villains, the streets were peaceful. Until Izuku decided to propose to Momo. Izuku was in a large building looking at the city until he jumped with nervousness on his face and saw a large jewelry store in the distance. And this fell to the excitement of the people who wanted an autograph, which Izuku kindly offered. And he entered the jewelry store. The people there looked at him in amazement, and an employee with a big smile came to his side. "What can I do for you, sir?" the employee said with a big smile. "Oh, hello, excuse me, I've come to buy an engagement ring," Izuku said nervously. "Oh, I see, come with me." The employee led Izuku to where there was a large display case. "Choose the one you like best," the employee said, elegantly moving his hand across the glass of the display case. Izuku spent a long time looking at the rings because he could afford them, partly because he worked long hours and earned a lot by arresting villains. Until he decided on a gold ring with a small diamond, the employee carefully stored it and put it in a purple bag and handed it to Izuku, who paid with a smile and left. Time passed and Izuku found himself very nervous in front of a very happy Momo. The two were in a large building watching the night in the city. The streets were sparkling and pedestrians were passing by in their cars or walking, and the moon was in its full splendor. Until Izuku swallowed hard and began to speak with a blush, this Momo, the raven-haired girl, looked at him with her smile. "Tell me, Izuku," the raven-haired girl only saw Izuku's face and could only smile at him. "I wanted to tell you something and I don't know if you're happy about it," the raven-haired girl said, surprised by what was said. "Of course I'm happy, why do you say that?" The raven-haired girl tilted her head with a tender expression. The green-haired boy swallowed again, stood up, put his hand in his pocket, and knelt in front of the raven-haired girl, much to her astonishment. Izuku took out the box and gathered all the courage he could and opened it. "Momo, will you marry me?" The raven-haired woman covered her mouth in astonishment, and tears began to flow from it. And all she could do was throw herself at Izuku, shouting a big yes. Flashback. That brings us to the present time. Izuku just smiled and turned around, and at that moment Momo entered wearing a big white dress. It was being carried by a white-haired girl with a little horn. That girl was Eri and she was smiling because she saw her great hero. The dark-haired girl only had a slight blush but smiled a lot when she saw the green-haired boy who was very happy. The dark-haired girl only put on something from the green-haired boy, who could only smile at her and take her hand. The girl went to sit next to her tutor, Aizawa. And the wedding began and the two were kneeling before the priest. Time passed. The priest spoke for a while until he stopped at the vows. "Izuku Midoriya, tell me what your vows are for your beloved." The priest looked at Izuku, who just smiled and looked at the ground. I promise I will do my best to make her happy. I will give anything for her. I promise on my life that I will do anything to make her happy, and that she has the best. Izuku just smiled happily at Momo. Momo Yaoyorozu, what are your vows? The priest fixed his gaze on Momo. She just smiled at Izuku. Promise me that Izuku will be happy. I will never abandon him, and I will be by his side at all times until the end. I will do anything to make him happy by my side. The two just looked at each other. Well said, Izuku speaks. Do you wish to take Momo Yaoyorozu as your wife? And you promise to be faithful to him, in prosperity and in adversity, in health and in sickness, and thus, to love and respect her, every day of your life. Izuku joined his hand with Momo's and smiled at her. Yes, I accept. Izuku just felt his heart race. Well, now Momo, have you said your vows? Do you want to take Izuku Midoriya as your husband? And you promise to be faithful to him, in prosperity and in adversity, in health and in sickness, and thus, to love and respect him, every day of your life. The raven-haired girl gripped Izuku's hand tightly, saying, yes, I accept. Well said. Before the word of God, bring the rings. The priest only saw his assistant coming with holy water. Aries started walking towards the betrothed couple with a brown-haired boy wearing a red cap. They both had the rings on a pad. The two stood before the priest and left their rings. By the power granted to me by God, Izuku Midoriya, put the ring on Momo Yaoyorozu. The green-haired boy could only feel his heart racing and took the ring. The boy gently took Momo's hand and lovingly placed the ring on it. Well done Momo Yaoyorozu, by the power of God, put the ring on Izuku Midoriya. Momo, with great love, took the ring, took her great love's hand, and put the ring on his finger. Good for the higher power that connects you, you are now husband and wife, the man may kiss the bride. Izuku lovingly took Momo's chin and planted a kiss on it. People started to celebrate. Shoto stood up and began to applaud. The bi-colored boy knew he could no longer return to Momo and could only wish her a great future. The green-haired man took Momo and carried her out of the church, leaving with her to have a great future together. Future. Izuku was in a hospital because Momo had just started giving birth and he was on duty as a hero. He received a call from his father-in-law in the ambulance, where he explained that Momo had started giving birth, and they went to the nearest hospital so that the black-haired girl could give birth without problems. Upon learning this, Izuku knocked out the villain he had in his hands with a single punch. People applauded, but the green-haired boy skipped off to get to the hospital. When Izuku arrived, he saw his former classmates outside the hospital. He just clicked his tongue. The green-haired boy saw Bakugo, who had a ring on his hand, as did Uraraka, but Izuku didn't care and went inside. All his former classmates could only sigh in sadness, but Shoto remained calm. Well, the green-haired boy and he started talking calmly after a long time. Izuku quickly went to where Momo started giving birth. Izuku rushed in and saw his wife screaming in pain. Izuku quickly went to her and gave her his hand. Bad idea. Momo, with great strength, made Izuku kneel. Momo screamed even louder and the grip worsened. Izuku was on his knees enduring the pain and could only speak. Love, push, push, was all Izuku could manage to say. Momo, as if he were a demon, glared at the green-haired boy, who felt fear at his gaze. And the raven-haired girl gave another scream, and a shout for the joy of both of them resounded. The doctor could only smile and give the news. They're twins. This took them both by surprise, and Izuku almost fainted for a few moments. But Momo could only smile and moved her hands to pick up her babies. Time skipe. Izuku was at home watching TV next to Momo. The two of them cuddled up watching an old program that Izuku used to watch about All Might. But the two of them heard two laughs from some children behind them. Izuku could only smile, as could Momo. Daddy. A little girl's voice came from behind the sofa and she jumped into her father's arms. The girl was bi-colored. She had black and green in her hair, but the most distinctive feature was her dark eyes. Her face had the freckles of the green-haired boy and her skin was milky like her mother's. The green-haired man picked her up and just smiled, playing with her. They were both smiling, but then another voice sounded. That's not nice, Inko. You told me it was my turn to play with Dad today, a child's voice said. The three saw the child and his hair color was dark and his eyes were green like his father's and his skin was milky without freckles. Okay. The girl was taken down from her father's arms and the boy jumped onto his father's shoulders. Hee, I'm here. The boy struck a characteristic pose of his father on his shoulders. Hee, Mommy Toshinori is very funny, Inko just smiled. I know, Inko, come on, let's play. Momo took her daughter's hand and they went to play. The family was very happy, and a photo showed it, where all four of them were smiling. The end. I hope you guys enjoyed this video and make sure to like and please hype this video. Now we will see you in the next video.